Welcome to another episode of Before You Kill Yourself with your host, Leo Flowers. I am Leo Flowers. Today, joining me is Katie Hadley, who is a National Academy of Sports Medicine certified nutrition coach, an ISSA certified personal trainer, and owner of the Well Factory. She works with individuals to promote overall health and to help manage a wide range of nutrition related issues. Uh, Katie Hadley, thank you for joining the podcast today. I'm excited to have you on. We met, I did a comedy show up in Carlsbad for a bunch of wealthy people. And and you and I had a wonderful conversation after the show. I met you, I met your husband, and that's where we talked about you being a wellness coach. And I was like, oh, this is beautiful. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Leo, for having me. And yes, we thoroughly enjoyed your show, and I'm so glad we were able to connect there. I've been very passionate about health and wellness for most of my life, actually, and I know you are. We started talking about how veganism had helped you, and we kind of had that connection about how food is such a huge factor in health, and how we can just improve our lives through not only food but fitness, and what we'll be talking about today. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so true. I just started a Sugar Anonymous group, and I'm sure my listeners are tired of hearing me talk about that. But I bring it up because we are talking about how food can affect our mental health. And so many people, I think, are in despair and distress, and they don't even realize how their nutrition it may be contributing to it. I know for me, if I have too many sugars in my diet, I become emotional. It disrupts my sleeping. I feel inflamed. It just dysregulates me. It throws me off balance. And I don't
Absolutely.
know what for you, Katie, led you down this path of wellness.
So I've pretty much been a health and wellness junkie most of my life. I grew up in a family that ate pretty healthily before it was a thing to eat healthy, especially in California, and all over the country. But we always had a giant garden and a big pile of vegetables on our plate for dinner every night, and I actually stopped eating red meat myself when I was 14. So I um, for just a little quick background, my career was in marketing. I owned an event marketing agency with my husband for 20 years, and we sold the business a few years back. And once the initial euphoria of selling this business that you've been working on for so long had gone away, I kind of struggled with finding my identity and my purpose again. I think so. Um, it wasn't until my dad actually uh, suffered from dementia for 10 years that the health and wellness part of my life really became this driving factor, this new purpose for me. I the you know I don't know if you I know that you've also lost a father to a devastating disease, and I think a lot of people might feel this same kind of I felt the fear that it would happen to myself. So I saw this horrible disease take my dad's mind little by little over 10 years. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if there's anything that I can be doing, eating something differently, was it an environmental factor? Was it completely genetics? What is it that I can be doing so this horrible dementia doesn't happen to me or my family members? I have two kids. Um, and so it was really this new purpose I'd found after kind of losing that purpose with my business beforehand.
You talk about growing up with a garden, veggies on your plate for most of your meals. You know, you're kind of a wellness junkie. And
Mm-hmm.
I, I I would assume that it would have been a bit confusing for you to grow up in such a healthy household and then to see your father become overtaken with dementia. Was that part of the emotion for you?
Absolutely, because looking back, I always felt that my dad in particular was a very healthy eater, for the most part. I mean, there were sugars involved, there was meat involved, of course, but for the most part, I mean, we were drinking cider vinegar before it was, unfortunately, as a kid, not the best thing that you want to be drinking, but for wellness back then. So I thought, what could he have done differently? Was it something that he was eating so much of, or was there something that he just hadn't thought about eating? What was it? So I just really wanted to find out. And obviously, with dementia, there are still so many questions as to why this disease happens to so many people, and there's not really a clear cut answer yet. But there have been lots and lots of studies that show that inflammation in general can cause these tangles in your brain. So I kind of started going into that realm, into like anti-inflammatory foods, and if that was something, looking and seeing, maybe my dad didn't eat this. Well, I think he did, or just adding all of those things that I could remember that he had eaten or he hadn't eaten. It was kind of just kind of a desperate measure for me to find out. So, in doing that, I just really got into health and the science of nutrition in general. And I realized all this information I was finding out for myself, that I was so passionate about sharing it with other people as well. And then, especially for people that are in their 40s, I work with a lot of women in particular, but men as well. These are all things that we struggle with. Maybe they have people in their lives that are also, their minds are failing, or a lot of people that I talk to are wanting to lose weight and kind of get their bodies back into health, or in general. So I just felt a real passion to kind of um, tell everybody what I've been learning and just try to help them in some way. It's just such a devastating thing to see a loved one going through such an illness, whether it's, heart disease or diabetes or dementia or depression, anxiety, all of these things. There seems to be a definite link with food. There may be other factors in general, like environment and genetics, of course, but there are some things that we can be doing for ourselves. And I'm surely doing it in my life, and I'm trying to help as many people as I can do it as well.
Yeah, you said a 10-year battle with dementia, and
Yes.
I can't imagine what the range of emotions you went through to watch someone slowly deteriorate like that over time.
Yes.
Can you
Yeah.
talk to us about what those emotions were? And because there's so many people out there who are struggling with this. A lot of people have chronic illnesses and they have parents who have chronic illnesses and they feel guilt and shame because of maybe some of the emotions that are coming up for them during this.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
and then what did you feel at the when he passed away? Was it both grief and relief? So you could take us through that?
Sure, sure. Yes. And you're absolutely right. It is at the point when my dad, after these 10 years, did actually pass away, my my mom had been his primary caregiver for all of those years, and we had kind of seen the decline over the years to the point where it's just kind of a very surreal experience when you have a father who was very important in your childhood and raising you, right? Um, can no longer recognize you, or even himself for that matter. And then eventually it starts out with him forgetting some things, or maybe his personality changing, getting a little bit, maybe saying some things that he normally wouldn't have said. And kind of, as children, or as looking on, it's kind of upsetting to see that this person is really changing. And then when there's very dramatic things where, they can't walk anymore, and you're just seeing they can't speak in sentences anymore, and sometimes even just in literal nonsense words, and maybe one or two words now and then. It's such a thing to watch as a child. Or, I think the worst part too, not the worst part, but another part that you feel just horror and guilt for, is for your mom, who is actually losing the love of her life. I think that was one of the hardest parts for me, is, that her life was never going to be the same either. So it's a really heartbreaking disease. And it gets to the point where, when they can't speak anymore, they can't eat anymore, as a child, you kind of do have this feeling of, guilt, that you want their suffering to stop. But it is a very real emotion that you're feeling. And it was almost a relief when he did pass. And you kind of have to just work through those emotions of not feeling bad about what you thought of his release of all the pain. So it definitely is a very heartbreaking thing to go through. And I think that's why I remember this one time with my dad, when he was very confused at this point, and he spent many hours just sitting in his chair, looking out into nothingness. Honestly, we would wonder what he was thinking about, and he couldn't really speak anymore in many sentences. But I was sitting in the room with him, and he looked over at me and he said, "Why am I here? I shouldn't be here anymore." And I think at that point, that was literally one of the most heartbreaking moments I've ever witnessed, because it was, just, he was in such a vulnerable state. And as a child, it's such a strange turn of events to be the stronger one in the relationship with your father. So that's one of those moments I will never forget. But that is the one kind of the aha moment that really pushed me into nutrition and health, and coaching people on how to hopefully keep this from happening to them. So
tell me more about this. You talk about the heartbreak as a child and some of the guilt. Where did you go? Did you have siblings that you could talk to? Did you feel like you could talk to your mom about your emotions? Did you grow up in a household where, you could cry and share, or did you suppress and just channel it into purpose?
yeah, well, I am the youngest of 5 children. So and we've always been able to talk about our feelings, and our emotions. And and my mom has always been there to talk it through as well. But it's funny because I always there's one thing that I never could really talk to my mom about, and it was that feeling that I felt that I did want this relief for my dad that death brought. And I think she felt the same as well. And it wasn't until after my dad had died that we both were able to kind of discuss that with each other. And we really did help each other work through that guilt of having that moment of feeling that way. And I grew up in a very religious family. My father was a very religious man, and so we were able to talk it through that way as well. And for me, that was very comforting because I knew my dad was where he had always hoped he would be. And so I think for me, that was a big comfort. But my sisters and my brother, we all would talk about how we felt about the last 10 years. And so I did have them to talk to, which is great. And it was a lifesaver for me, because you really do need someone to talk it through with, especially if you don't have any friends that have gone through it before. But luckily I was born into that family of 5. So we were each other's support system.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that feels like to be the youngest of 5 and also feel like I have to be the stronger one in the relationship with my father.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an emotion that I will never forget. It just really, I could almost see myself above the room at that point. It's just a strange feeling, just seeing me almost as the parent, and my father as this helpless child that I couldn't really do anything for, but I wanted to so much. And it was just kind of just such a surreal experience, that one moment.
So you talk about seeing yourself above the room, and but you also talked about how religion was comforting. How did religion comfort you? How did it grind? How did it not grind you, but ground you? Because so many people struggle with God and religion, and people are split on, their views on God. How did it comfort you, and how did it ground you?
Right. So, you know, because my father was he was an elder in the church, and he was always a large figure in the church where we were, and and that trickled down into our family life. Um, he always instilled in his children the need for God and the need for believing in something after this life that's better. So I think for all of the children, and myself in particular, growing up, sometimes that was a little hard to take. Being this father who, he kind of ruled the roost in our family, um, and really religion played such a big part, whether sometimes as a child you wanted it to or not. And looking back now, I sometimes kind of resented it growing up, but now that he's gone, there's so many times different Bible verses he shared with me, or things that I truly believed and wanted to believe even without seeing. I have that faith that there is something more out there. And I'm thankful for my dad for being kind of tough on us when it came to going to church every Sunday, and and listening to those um, Bible verses that he always taught us. And now they became a comfort to me. They really did. And I really am thankful for him for that. Even though I don't think I saw it back then, but after he died, I definitely, I say, okay, I get it now, and that's something that I think has been a huge help for all of my family. As much as we, didn't appreciate it back then, I think now we can kind of draw upon some of those things that he taught us over the years, and it is a true comfort to us.
So I would imagine that you guys are going to church on Sundays. You're saying prayers before meals. Are
um, well, um, not every Sunday anymore, but we do have a real faith in my family and my children and my husband. But we don't go to church every week, but we do have a real relationship. I feel like with God that not always needs to be at church, but I do definitely feel that we have a relationship, whether it's at church every Sunday or not. And growing up, that was absolutely something we had to do. So, maybe that's that's the reason we don't go every week. I don't know, but I can always get better at that, right?
I haven't been to church in forever. I download a podcast sermon, and so no
Yeah.
judgment over here.
Okay.
I'm like driving. I'm like cleaning a house and listening to some praise or worship.
Right, right. And that's okay sometimes. That's okay.
So you talked about how religion was part of comforting you during that time. What else comforts you in times of emotional distress?
Well, I think this is when luckily I have a husband that I can talk to if um if I have, like, now, if I'm worried about something emotionally stressful, or even about my dad still, because he's lost his dad as well, so he has that to fall back on to help me with. But a lot of times for me, when I'm emotionally stressed, I really look to, for me, it's spending that time alone, maybe going for a hike, or getting in a workout, or something that's really making me shut my mind off for a moment, and just really focusing on the task at hand. And usually for me, that does include some form of exercise. I feel like that's such a really good release for me. And I tell my clients, how important that is. Um, I feel like those endorphins that you get when you exercise, and the energy that you get in your body, and we know we're protecting our bones and burning calories. It just is something that I really kind of gravitate to when I'm feeling anxious or depressed about something, or just having a really hard time in life with a relationship or whatever. So that's kind of what I do. And I think it's, for my clients, I often tell them, if you're feeling bad about yourself, it's time to go out for a run, or go for a hike, or take your dog for a walk or something. So that's what I do.
Yeah, there's something very soothing and comforting about being outdoors, being with nature. I had someone on, Elena Artnick, who's a free diver. And she on one breath would go like, I forget how, like 9,000 feet below. I mean, that's ridiculous,
Oh yeah.
but she basically could hold her breath for like 4 or 5 minutes and sink down. And she said what she loved about the depth, because I was like, what about sharks and, other things? And she said, the sharks on land are more dangerous. But she said what she loved about sinking to that depth is that there was no judgment.
Mm,
There was no, she didn't have to worry about what people thought of her or how they saw her. It was the one time she felt like she could just be. And
that
I sense that when I go hiking. I mean, now that everybody's home, and they're hiking, I got to hike a little further to get that alone time. It's like everybody went out and got like some trekking poles and a flashlight, and I'm like, oh Jesus.
that is definitely true. That's definitely true. Yes, I totally agree. You are in the zone. You're alone in your thoughts, and like you said, no one is judging you. It's very pure, and it feels great. Another thing too, when I do feel sorry for myself, if you will, if I'm feeling sorry for myself, my husband will tell me, go call your mom. If you feel sorry for yourself, go call your mom, because she has it worse than you. Because she is still, after 3.5 years, um, dealing with the grief of losing my father. And it kind of snaps me back into state, if you will, that there are so many people that have so many other problems and trials way worse than whatever I'm going through. So that kind of snaps me into state, like, go call your mom, go see what she's doing, make her feel good. And yeah, so that's kind of what I do as well. And it does put perspective on whatever is bothering me.
I've just started practicing that, calling my mom. I used to be like, I'm an adult. I got this. I don't need to call my mom. What does she know? And I got to tell you, our parents, I can't speak for all parents, but the things that I resented my mom for and was kind of put off by are the things that I'm now appreciating, because my mom wasn't a very emotional person. And I find that when I am feeling emotional or in distress, I can call her to kind of balance me out because she has such an objective point of view. She's been through hurricanes and loss, and she had a bunch of siblings, and just being an immigrant from another country. Like, she's just very like day by day, where like I'm catastrophizing 5, 10, 20 years from now, and she's stopping to smell the roses. And when I call and talk to her just about life, not I don't call her to talk about what I'm going through, but just about life, like, I always feel 10 times better. Now when she calls me, I feel worse, but when I call her, I don't know what the because she calls me with her stuff, but when I call her, I'm like, I'm so glad I called you.
That is true. That is true. It's something that it almost simplifies life in a way when we talk to our moms, I feel like. And um and and we're that kid again. We are their child, and we can feel a little bit more vulnerable with them than we usually have to show to other people. So I feel like I do always feel better when I talk to my mom, and the good daughter I am, I do try to call her daily, even though she is on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. But we may chat for literally 5 minutes, but it does kind of keep us uh, keep us attached somehow through the miles. And I do think, like you said, it does make you feel good when you call them. Like you said, when they call you, it's usually something more important. but but yeah, that's what you have to do. Call your mom when you're feeling bad about yourself.
So I want to backtrack a little bit because we are talking exercise, nutrition. I know we haven't gotten too deep into that, but there are parts of it that are so valuable. And what I mean by that is, earlier you mentioned that you had a marketing agency with your husband and that you two sold it. And I want to go back to that because the amount of communication and effective communication that you two had to have had to not only start the business, but to build the business and then to sell it, I'm sure, profitably. Um, a lot of people don't even have that in their intimate relationship. So it's fascinating that you two have been able to have that intimately and business wise. Is that something that you had to work on? And what did you learn from that? And I'm asking about that because I know when I go to the foods, when I overeat, when I binge or, uh, you know, whatever my food issue is, it's because I really don't feel seen, heard, or understood.
Mhm.
And I would imagine a lot of people struggle with food because of something going on in their relationships, and it's not just about the food.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does have a lot to do with relationships, I think, and going back to the relationship that I had with my husband, working with him for 20 years. When I tell people that, they usually have a similar response that you did, like how did you actually do that? Because um, when you're living with someone and working with them, I mean, that is too much for a lot of people. So for whatever reason, I think the reason it worked is in the beginning, my husband had started this business. I had been working at an ad agency prior, and he asked me to come on board with him. And I think the fact that I kind of let let him grow the business in the way that he wanted to grow it, and see the big picture of where the business was going, that our relationship worked. Living together, working together. I was more of the day to day. What do we need to do today? And he was much more of the big picture. So I think that is how we survived all of those years and thrived with the business, because we both had different jobs and we did not cross each other's paths in that way. We worked side by side, but tried never to step on each other's toes because we had completely different jobs to do. That long term vision was his, and hey, we've got to get this done today before the end of the day was mine. So we worked very well together. And I do know that obviously that doesn't happen all the time. Of course, every relationship, uh, you fight every once in a while, and of course that happens with us too. And probably we do tend to eat differently when that happens, just because we're so frustrated and we just don't want to deal with thinking about that other person necessarily. So, but I think, you know, that's what a lot of the people that I talk to that are also kind of in their 40s, and they're maybe married or divorced or busy raising their families or pursuing their careers or maybe empty nesters or changing careers. And I do know that food is for them this emotional crutch that a lot of people use. And the chances are through the years when we were in our 20s, we may have been these lean, mean fighting machines, right? And then as we have children or just are wrapped up in our career, our health and fitness takes a back seat. So, and our society doesn't really promote health and fitness in general. I mean, food companies worry very little about the health of people, right? Their job is to kind of make things that taste good and are addicting as possible, so we buy more of it. And so I think, we're constantly bombarded by sugary goodness, right? And highly saturated foods that, sound sound with the commercials and billboards and in grocery stores, it's really hard to resist. So I think that's where many of us end up when we are in our 40s. And then one day we wake up and we're who we were is completely out of reach physically, and then emotionally because our bodies have just changed because of the aging process, of course, and then partly due to Doritos and donuts and things like that. So, so we're kind of stuck in this rut, and we're all struggling with these same kind of problems and insecurities as we age, I think.
I love that statement when you said who we were is completely out of reach. Can you
Yeah.
say more about that? Because I feel like that's such a powerful statement.
Yeah. I think, when I think over 20 years, right, we never, all of the weight, all of our struggles, they don't come all at once, right? They don't come in a wheelbarrow to us and say, here you go, here's all the weight you're going to gain and put it on you. And, it just happens over days, over weeks, over months of unhealthy habits that aren't really working for us at all. Right. So, I mean, it's partly due to the aging process that it's out of reach. I mean, by the age of 30, I think they say that most people lose about a half a pound of muscle a year. So there's that, right? There's that natural aging process. And then we have, a few wrinkles here and there. And we see these low fat, no fat 20 somethings, right? That with all these doctored images from social media or TV and even the person, I don't care how strong you are in your self-esteem, but that can get us down. I mean, I don't believe anyone is immune to those images that we see. And so by the time we realize it, 30 or 40 pounds or 100 pounds have cropped up on our bodies, and now we're living with it. And to lose 100 pounds, even 30, even 20 pounds is very daunting to many people. And I think that's why it's such a desperate feeling and such a disheartening place to be. And I think, we all kind of struggle with that, knowing like, how do I get back to that person that I was or the person I want to be? It's literally, it seems impossible. So, and then, cue the depression and the loathing your bodies, and then as women in particular, I feel like wrinkles are something that we should never have. And I think that's just an unrealistic view of what to expect as we age. We can't do much about some of those things, but we are 100% in control of what we put into our bodies. So I try to incorporate that into my teaching, is that even as daunting and as extremely out of reach as it seems to get back to you, the one you want to be back to, you have to start somewhere. You have to start today, and tiny, tiny increments. You don't, what's the saying? You don't eat an elephant in one bite. You take it bits at a time. And that is what we have to remember. Otherwise, it's so overwhelming that we'll never get beyond it, and we'll gain even more weight and feel even more depressed. So that's what we have to work on, is kind of taking that one bite at a time approach to anything we want to change that's not working for us.
I love it. Taking it slow, taking it inch by inch, because otherwise it could feel overwhelming. It could feel so daunting that we just shut down, isolate, and withdraw instead of
Exactly.
engaging and sharing, opening up and taking a chance of being vulnerable. You know,
Right.
earlier you talked about, how what helped your relationship thrive and survive is, recognizing that he's big picture in your day to day, but obviously in that frustrations occur. And whether you're talking about a husband or a business partner or whoever, frustrations occur in our relationships and our communication. And at some point, we have to mend those tears in our relationship. We have to repair, we have to find a way to recover from whatever differences that we have. How do you guys navigate that? Do you just say I'm sorry, or do you just like move on from it? What was your process for repairing those moments?
Sure. I think I think our process for repairing those moments has always been laughter, honestly. We as mad as we can be, and some fights are really serious topics, and you think, well, a joke couldn't help that situation. But I have found, and I think we would both agree, over the years, um, disarming whatever malice we're feeling toward each other with some inside joke, or some joke that has some relevance to the topic at hand, or maybe nothing relevant at all, but something that we know will make the other person laugh. For us, that seems to be some little magic pill that we throw at each other when we're having this real intense argument or dislike for each other, honestly. So that for us has seemed to work. I don't know if it works for everyone. I'm sure it doesn't, but that is something that we always fall back on. And I think in any relationship, you have to think about, put it into perspective. Is this serious enough for you to end your relationship with this person forever? Probably not. There's so many things that we can work through, right? If we just kind of sit back, relax, don't discuss it at night. I feel like that's a very important factor, because when you're tired, nothing, everything is blown out of proportion. But I think you really have to kind of step back and say, hey, is this important enough for me to lose this person forever in my life? And so I think whatever the argument is, whatever it is, I think you have to kind of take that into perspective and say, no, if the answer is no, then you have to just be okay with that answer and try to smooth it over. And usually for us, that is a joke.
So do you have like a bunch of jokes at hand? Are you like writing down one-liners?
Maybe you could give me some good jokes I could throw in there, but no one-liners. But I feel like I can't give you any examples necessarily, but I would be glad to take any from you if you can figure that out.
Yeah, it's true. The laughter is it definitely helps. I've noticed that even with Michelle and myself. Usually we pick a program to watch together at night, and if we watch like a thriller or some drama, uh, the tension from the show usually permeates into our energy towards each other. But if we
Yeah.
watch something funny like Curb Your Enthusiasm or some
Hmm.
silly like those travel shows or something like that, or like even a cooking show, it could even be something that's kind of neutral. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
that the energy between us it's really affected by what we're consuming and watching, and to the point where like I stopped reading the news as much, and because I was just realizing how that was affecting how I was showing up into the world and in my
Yes.
relationship. So you're right, laughter is so big Um, and so, we're talking about food and nutrition. Talk to us about like how you work with your clients and like what
Hmm.
that process looks like.
Sure. So, most of my clients in general, they are at the point where they're needing or wanting, I should say, to lose 30 or 40 pounds. They've kind of put themselves on the back burner for so long, and now they're at the point that they're exhausted, and they just don't want to feel that way anymore. So we really I'm a big proponent of goal setting and positive mindset, right? And intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and gratitude. All of those things we talk about, not only nutrient rich foods or hydration or exercise. um, some people I talk to do not even like to exercise. So um, we talk about the importance of moving your body and sleep and reducing stress and those cortisol levels that can cause poor sleep and weight gain and anxiety and depression and all of that. So we talk about all those different topics. But I do start out every session with really figuring out what people what their specific goal is, right? And the more specific the better, obviously. Like, I really want them to be writing it down daily, and I do believe 100% there is a magic in that. And I say, put it on a sticky on your bathroom mirror, and write it every day. Don't leave the same one up. Rip it up and then write it again the next day. Because if you can see it and hear it in your mind, I so believe that there is such a power in goal setting. And like I said, a lot of people's goals are to get back into some sort of shape outside. And then, I want to stress the importance of getting in shape inside as well. And that the outside will follow suit, right? So we talk about all that. I go to the grocery store with them. We do field trips. We do pantry purges, if you will, just kind of making them aware of reading labels and how much sugar and saturated fat and are in things that they never knew they were in, like granola bars and yogurt and things like that. So I try to make it a fun experience, because losing weight isn't fun. Let's face it, right? It's more fun to eat things that taste really great. But what am teaching and hope to teach my clients is that healthy food can also taste good. So, and hopefully, by the time we end our sessions with each other, they'll actually crave healthy food more than junk. So that's kind of my approach. And obviously, I'm a big proponent of that anti-inflammatory diet, and even if they're not into, veganism is quite a nasty word to some, or scary, I should say, because a lot of people just don't know what that actually means or how anything could actually taste good that way. But I I do love that lifestyle, and I believe it's a healthy lifestyle. But I also, if they're not into vegan meals per se, I think the Mediterranean diet is also a good way for us to get many of the nutrients that we need to help depression and anxiety and dementia and all of that, as well as to create this healthy body.
I notice, what I love about what you said is writing it down every day. It's something that I've started to put in practice. I have like notes in my cell phone, and I look at it, I add to it, I tweak it, I try to talk about it and visualize it on a day to day. And but I like the idea of writing it so you can see it. And I know that people talk about saying it out loud,
Mhm.
every day. But it's like whatever you feel really connected to. So I love that. But I also noticed that you said write down did you say goal or goals? Because I know that some people like have one thing and some people like you can write down 10 things. How do you help somebody whittle down to their one
Right.
thing?
Yeah, that's a good point too, because you're right. A goal there, if I had to say what my goal was right this moment, there would be several of them, right? So, but the goal when I'm working with people is usually very clear. They're coming for help with weight loss. So when we talk about that, we just don't say, I want to lose weight, or I want to lose 20 pounds. Well, what does that look like, right? So it needs to be very specific. I always say, that one of my clients now, her birthday is coming up, her 50th birthday, and she wants to be able to, in December, and she wants to be able to look good at her birthday. So what does that mean, looking good? So, that that extrinsic motivation for her is for people to look at her and say, wow, you look great. What have you done? And then, her intrinsic motivation that we talk about is that she feels accomplished by losing this weight. So in writing her goals, I say, let's be very specific. By December 20th, I will be 145 or whatever the weight is that they're shooting for. Um, and so we want to be as specific as we can, right? So it can't be, I want to lose 200 pounds, by December. Well, that's not realistic. So it has to be realistic, but it also has to be something timely with a date so we can see it daily. So on that sticky that I have them write every morning, that whole sentence is always on it. By this time, this date, December 20th, I will be 145 or 200 on the scale, whatever it is. So that's kind of for my clients, the one goal, but we just have to kind of narrow it down and make it super specific so there's no wiggle room.
I love that. Setting a date, being specific, writing it down. And then also, what sounds like is really important is working with somebody else so that there's an accountability factor. I think a lot of when I hear about people, going back or reverting back to, the 30 or 40 pounds that they lost, usually it's like after they've quit the program, after they've lost that support, after they've
Mm-hmm.
they get to that place where the ego kicks in and go, I got this. I don't need a
Right.
coach or a therapist or when I work with clients, the first thing I say is like, listen, you're gonna feel great immediately, and then you're gonna think you don't need to keep coming back, and that's exactly when you need to come back is when you're feeling great and lucid, because that hurricane's coming back. Like you're in hurricane territory. You know what I'm saying? This is Oklahoma. It doesn't just get one hurricane. So uh let's stick to it.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. I mean, accountability is something that where you see results. That is the bottom line. And when you have no one waiting for you at the gym at 6 a.m. before work, or if you have no one that's, keeping you accountable for how you did last week, and maybe your goal is to lose a pound a week, right? So if that goes away and it gets more loose, right, and you can you kind of know the parameters, but hey, I'm going to have dessert and wine, or I'm going to have, all of these factors come into play when you don't have to look that person in the eye the following week. Then that's when it gets hard, and that's definitely ability, whether it's from family members or a coach or from a best friend. That accountability is key in following through with getting to your goal. And and living there, right? Staying there in that happy place.
I love that accountability and staying there in that happy place. And you know, there are going to be days where you don't want to get up and go to the gym. So you talked about mindset. What's the how do they reframe it? What do they say to themselves on those mornings where going to the gym is so daunting and their body just feels so heavy and you know, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that, one little step at a time, right? With that, the elephant, you take it one bite at a time. If you I always suggest to my clients, the first thing, if you're not going to the office, go ahead and put your workout clothes on the first thing when you get up. That way, you're giving your body a signal that, hey, I've got this on, put your sneakers on, get ready. There's no excuse once you're all suited up and ready to go, right? I feel like that's worked for me over the years. Because, yeah, there are some times that you just do not want to go. But if you don't have that accountability of someone meeting you at the gym, give yourself that advantage by putting those workout clothes on the first thing in the morning. So before you shower, before you do all that, if you're not going to the office, go do it. As the day progresses, we can think of more and more excuses as to why we can't fit the gym in, right? So if we I encourage them to do it in the morning if that works for them, because the excuses pile up at the end of the day and then we don't end up doing it. And it really is just about one day, making one good decision a day, right? To get you to that end goal.
Yeah, you know, because for a lot of people, I'm surprised at how many people don't really have exercise and movement as a practice. And so, you know, one of the things I share with clients is, you know, just practice going to the gym. Don't even make it about
Hmm.
the working out because if you've never been to the gym, going to the gym can be like too much. And talk about taking baby steps. So just kind of get that into your muscle memory of just going to the gym and what that feels like. And then you know, and then we can work on a working out. But just see what it feels like to get up, go to the gym. Because you're right, I love that. Wake up, do the hard thing first. Everything else is going to
Hmm.
be easy breezy after that morning workout. So